I think we are talking about a very interesting topic called as product market fit, cracking the code as truly it is. I myself, a founder, in the last 3 years, I've realized that it's like a perpetual malachite found, because you're always trying to find that where is the product market fit lying. So for all the aspiring or maybe existing founders, we will try to demystify this with all three of us and two companies who have already seemed to have found their product market fit, while I'm still trying to. I'll straight away throw it open to Monitra Health, and I will throw it open to Rakesh. Basically, Rakesh, in your view, what is your take on at what stage does the founder typically gets to know, Ravi, I'm sorry, the product market fit getting arrived, and it's always very tricky because you're thinking that you have reached there, but I guess the definition is extremely wide. So please share your thoughts on that, and we will follow up the same question from Rakesh as well.
Sure. Thank you very much. So this question is an extremely difficult question to answer, and that's the area that most startup founders struggle. Three things that are important to look at. Number one, whatever product that you have created, do you have customers who are using it? That's the number one thing. Second is, as you're looking to sort of grow, can your production keep pace with the customer demand, or whatever is the customer usage? So in a physical product, we talk about production. Can your production keep pace with your demand? In case you have a SaaS product, can you open up as many servers, or if you're using serverless, can you keep pace with that? The third aspect is your customer willing to pay money or not for your product? So these three things, if you get these three things in place, I think you've got your product market fit.
So I think about product market fit, I think the easiest way to understand if you have a product that somebody is willing to pay, I think that's the first step. But I think having just a couple of customers or a few customers is not enough. So you need a product that is actually scalable if you really want to build a large company. But otherwise, any small solution would solve some of the customers' problem. You have to identify two things. Do you have a paying customer? And is it scalable? Can you actually get hundreds of clients or thousands of customers who would pay at that scale and keep growing? I think that's about it.
I've just one experience to share from what I'm trying to do for the last 3 years, and we did had a pivot during COVID, is that some of the areas in services and products also find a product market fit by generating a demand. Sometimes those demands are quite latent, and those demands have to be kind of triggered. So PMF may not straight up appear as straightforwardly as we may think, and it can develop over the years. Moving to my next question to the panelist. Once you achieve product market fit, Ravi, Rakesh, PMF is also something which is constantly evolving. And how do you, in your own experiences, both of you having raised money through grants and through institutional funds, have seen that definition kind of expanding and evolving when you kind of scale up, when you grow, when you diversify your product and services portfolio? So it would be interesting to get some thoughts from both of you. By the way, Monitra Health is in the business of tracking heartbeat and basically enabling, I would say, early detection of health issues. And of course, I'm speaking on behalf of my colleague, but he can elaborate better. And Rakesh is in the business of solving for D2C logistics by the company name called Whistledrive for the clarity purposes. My company solves for health and fitness for every individual by giving a personalized coach, which is powered by artificial intelligence. But moving back to Monitra and their evolving definition of PMF.
When you talk about product market fit, I think the market in general is not static. It's highly dynamic, and it keeps changing, and a lot of trends keep happening. So as companies, it's very, very important that we sort of keep an eye on these trends. Otherwise, you will not be in a position to ensure that your product evolves along with the changing trends in the marketplace. So in our case, when we started off, I'll give you an example. So our product is basically solving two biggest problems in clinical cardiology. One is patients faint. Second is patients have these episodic palpitations. Extremely difficult to diagnose. So we have built this entire end-to-end platform that consists of adhesive biosensors. These are like band-aid-like stickers where you peel it off, put it onto the chest. All the data from here goes to the phone to the cloud, and we do real-time continuous monitoring, and we give insights in terms of what's going on with the patients. So now in this particular case, when we started off, we had a product in which we thought, okay, the best way to enter this particular market is that the product is a reusable product, the cost structure is extremely low, so we had a battery that could be recharged every time a patient uses it. But once we hit the market, the first few set of customers, especially the nurses who were using the product, those guys, they used to put the product as soon as they used to get the product back, they used to keep it in the in their shelf. They used to forget to recharge the product. So when a new customer came, it used to take another half an hour to 45 minutes to charge this device. So it was a roadblock, it was a challenge because the patients were not willing to wait for that long. So we quickly pivoted from there and we replaced our rechargeable battery to a fully disposable battery. So every time, say, a new user comes in, it's up and ready. Then the other trend that we are looking at in the market is, from our standpoint is, we do continuous real-time monitoring, so we transmit all the data onto the cloud. From that standpoint, the cost of data is reducing, drastically over a period of time. So the question for us is, should we keep our intelligence, that we have on the cloud now, bring it to the sensor or not? So that's a trend that we're continuously, looking at and positioning ourselves to evolve.
That's a great example. So basically, you're keeping an eye on what the customer is wanting and then constantly redefining and evolving the product market fit for your offering.
There's one more point is that, see, the same product can be used by multiple customers. So while we started off in the cardiology space, we are noticing now that a lot of neurologists also are prescribing a product. So the same product for a completely different customer segment, it solves the problem. How does it solve the problem? So when we go to neurologists deal in brain strokes. So whenever there's a clot inside the brain, the patients have, again, fainting episodes. So now what happens is, out of every 100 brain strokes, about 25 strokes are such where the doctors don't know what's causing the stroke. And if these clots are formed inside the heart and reach the brain, it's a major problem and chances of a repeat stroke are very high, which is where monitoring comes into play. So while we had the same product, we found a very good, separate indication in the market, in a completely different customer segment.
Rakesh, your views on this?
So the evolution of product market fit, is something that you have to keep up with depending on how the market conditions change and how your customers want the product to be. I'll just give an example. So before the pandemic, we were a corporate transportation player. So we were essentially doing technology and mobility services for corporate companies. And pandemic comes and we were growing like crazy, and the pandemic just got everything to zero. Everyone is working from home. So what do? Then we looked at an opportunity that my DNA, the operational and technology DNA that are built in corporate transportation, can be used for logistics as well. So we evolved from a corporate transportation player to a logistics player. And once we stepped into logistics, and right now we are working with almost all of the top e-commerce brands in the country. We have presence in 5 metros, we have presence in more than 40 tier 2, tier 3 cities. But what I've understood is that the same logistics stack that we have built in terms of tech and operations can't be fully utilized for D2C logistics, because D2C brands have a different problem statement altogether. And there are companies like Shiprocket, who are aggregating courier companies. There are companies who do D2C logistics as a focused thing. But what D2C brands need is a platform which aggregates all sorts of activities, whether it is marketing or logistics or working capital financing, because Kiss to Death is in a situation where D2C brands face a lot, because there is every possibility for a D2C brand to die if they don't plan it well. Of course, there was a whole VC push about D2C brands, but D2C as a channel is not sustainable, and they are trying to evolve into different channels, maybe whether it is marketplace or retail or whatever. And in Whistledrive, we are launching something called Hyperspace, which is focused on this problem statement where all the functions that a D2C brand needs would get aggregated. So the answer to the question is that you keep evolving, you understand what market needs, and then focus on what customer really wants.
Sure, thank you. I'll move to an interesting area within the product market fit genre, so to say. Many of you will be founders here, and all three of us are, of course, founders. And Indian people are very entrepreneurial in nature. I guess the divide between whether we are arriving at a product market fit or not is something which we should be very clear about. And the haze kind of takes over and we kind of get delusional about our dream and our idea. And I would like to now throw open this question to both my panelists, that at what stage you would think that the founder community should be wary and be acknowledgeable of the fact that this is not working out. Because if product market fit is not working out to all the young people, experienced people, senior people, and I'm sure there'll be much more views here, I think we need to take a very strong reality check. And that is something which most of us, I would say, kind of, shy away from doing. And that's what leads to sometimes some very, very severe outcomes. So Ravi, Rakesh, or Rakesh, Ravi, in any order, how do you separate out the delusion from, and you have been through such pivots during COVID, so you have seen some situations like these. I have been through one already. So yeah.
I think the easiest way to deal with that is when you decide to be an entrepreneur and you're running a business, you can happily keep your ego and emotions locked somewhere inside. If you bring them into the business, then you're screwed, of course, big time. So the only thing that is stopping a company from failing is your enthusiasm to keep going. And if you don't, have a reality check on what is working and what is not, you can perpetually be a hustler and feel that you're doing something amazing, but your company won't grow, so won't you. So it doesn't matter what ego trip you're getting onto. What matters is the reality of what market thinks of you in terms of revenue, in terms of brand, in terms of growth. That's it.
That's a very difficult, zone to be in, to understand what's traction. Are you really getting traction or not? Because you will always find waves of growth and you'll believe, okay, this is amazing, I am there. Okay, but unfortunately, when you have that, growth spurt, you will also have a dip. So it's a very difficult question to answer for, any entrepreneur. And like, my co-panelist Rakesh was saying, I think it's very important to keep your emotion aside and your ego aside, and to take a very factual, look at, the business. Number one is, your customers. How many customers do you have? Are the same set of customers coming back to you, for the same problem that you're looking to solve? Whether it's version 1, version 2, version 3, version 4 of your, of your iteration and your product. Second thing I would say is that when you talk about growth, right? So is growth sustainable or not? Do you have loyal set of customers who are backing you up? That should give you an idea. When we spoke about the product market fit, the second point that I spoke about is, is your production, keeping pace with the customer demand or not? Or you don't have enough demand right now? Those are questions that, one needs to look at, very well. The third set is, you can also have a massive growth. You'll have a huge customer set, very good adoption, but is the customer paying or not, you or not? That's another, question that you need to look at. They may not pay you now, but there's a potential that you grow so well that somebody else pays for that customer set. These are factors that one needs to look at, but in a nutshell, don't be emotional.
So look, I think in the interest of time, we can go on discussing product market fit till whatever time. And since we are kind of followed up with an important session of Chief Minister, I think we would like to throw it open for questions. Anybody who would like to ask around PMF in general, or share any experience or thoughts, so that it is an interactive session as opposed to being just a monologue. So yeah, and the question can be to anybody, happy to moderate or take myself.
How are you dealing with the semiconductor shortage?
Difficult problem to handle. So the good part, I would say, is in our journey, right? We worked on 2 platforms. So we worked on TI platform and another platform simultaneously. So when we were hit with this COVID wave and then the semiconductor shortage, we were in a position to pivot to either one of the two, to handle, wherever the supply was, to use that product into a, use those chips into a product. That's one thing that helped us. Second thing is, you need to scout and plan, and you need to build your inventory. So whenever you go through multiple distributors, build your inventory, well in advance for the next, say, 1 or 2 years, whatever growth that you're planning for. That's going to be very, very critical, and that's what we have done. So these are 2 things that helped us, is working on different platforms so that you have options in terms of chips. That's not a luxury that every startup has. It happened to us as a result of some of the mistakes that we had done, and that helped us later on. The second is you need to build inventory well in advance, and you need to work with several distributors.
Present scenario of technological advances, when you develop a product in a large number for the market, the customer feedback after he uses that and gives it back to you will be very valuable. So you keep monitoring that on a regular basis so that you can add new features into your product so that it can be up to date compared to other products in the world.
Absolutely right, sir. As in, there is this constant temptation of receiving, seeking feedback, and then updating your features. But I guess what you are saying is very important for keep on refining your product, and as supposed to kind of making it fitter and fitter for the market. But then the promoter or the founder group has also to be very careful that which feature is at what cost, and that feedback is how strong. And whether it kind of, the user is ready to pay for that feature. Because otherwise engineering problems can be constantly solved. But what you say is absolutely right. I think the founders have to be extremely mindful and keep their eyes and ears open for such feedback to come in and then incorporate basis some kind of a cost benefit analysis.
How do you manage copycats in health sector and other sectors? Somebody will copy your thing.
So I have an answer for that. This is a feedback that I got from Singapore when I traveled. So there are a lot of Chinese companies, who would copy your product. Was a question that was posed, and the person who's answering there is that if you have copycats, that means you have arrived. That means your product is really good for you to have copycats. But there's another answer to it, is that you try to protect your innovation and your product through multiple means. You use patents, you use trademarks, you use, depending on the type of business that you are into, there are avenues to protect your product.
No, I feel that everything is a copy of a copy of a copy. So at the end of the day, most startups here are, a replica of what happens in the West. So we catch up to those trends. So technically everything is a copy.
And I guess in that so-called Control-C, Control-V scenario, which you have called out, I guess the people have to constantly differentiate. As they say, everything has been said in the Bible and the Gita, but still people are giving so much of gyan in different ways, right? So
I like this quote a lot. I tell my team a lot. So good artists copy, great artists steal. So you have to be intelligent to make it look like you did copy. But I think most people do. It's fine.
Indian trademark laws are, still evolving, and the IP environment is still evolving. But specifically, what you're asking, at least I don't have an answer that what are 3-4 patents which we can kind of leverage from. But yeah, I guess you have to protect your, as they say, you make your own defensible moat with your own differentiation, and that's what keeps you on the highest recall of your consumer.
I would like to add to this is that the Startup India has a very good policy on innovation. They give a lot of incentives on patents, and they fast track patents for if you got that DIPP certification. Yeah. So in our case, it got fast tracked. We got a granted patent in India thanks to that. So I would urge you to go and look at that.
Can you share some of the best techniques and ways to validate your product market fit? Like especially in let's say D2C brand, and you're in the food space, let's say a cloud kitchen space. I don't have too much bandwidth in terms of resource and time to go and check the entire market. So what is the best way, some techniques that will save our time and money to check if this product fits the market and we can go ahead and launch and start the business?
Yeah, so you're technically my customer. I can do a one-to-one and help it out, but to give you an idea on how we are trying to do it, I think the marketing spend for a D2C brand is kind of spread out now. And if you're selling everywhere, you're not literally selling anywhere. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to do a location-specific marketing and a dark store-driven delivery model where you would market in a certain community or bunch of communities, and we would have the deliveries done in that particular location. So once you understand that the customers are actually buying, then you can start marketing in another location. But if you just go all in and do Instagram ads and all that, you'd be spending a lot of money, and lot of money would go into logistics cost, which I don't think is very intelligent. We can talk after this. I'd be happy to share some views on that.
Start off with a hypothesis. Don't boil the ocean. Focus on a small geography, small territory. Okay, the assumption that you make is that whatever model that you come out for the customer sets out here in the small geography that you're targeting, you can replicate that across the board. So as long as you're able to, crack the model for the small geography that you're talking about, I think that's the way to go about it.
Got it.
My small view will be that think about it, will you use your product the first? And in your closed cohorts, don't check this with your mom, but others, are they willing to pay for it? Are they willing to take a dig in it? And if you get a shot, read the book called Mom's Test.
Mom's test.
MOMS, Mom's Test.
My name is Bindusara, and we are a Canadian-based AI deep tech startup, and we develop a product specifically for oil and gas sector. My question to you is, how do you, specifically in product market fit, how do you move the SaaS flywheel from the founder-led and put it into a hyper-growth sales model, considering a fact that B2B has a longer sales cycle, and how would you spin the flywheel for across the journey? Would you like to share some practice or thoughts on this? Thanks.
To my mind, I think his question is that for a SaaS product in a oil and gas tech-enabled product, how does he kind of gets the flywheel going to cover a larger set of audience, correct?
So we have done B2B SaaS and also service for corporates. So I think what we have done is you have to be in places where these customers are, and you will have to find your support system in the initial days. So at least 1-2 customers if you can crack through your network, or ideally the best way to reach a customer is through a referral. Try and find if you can get connected to someone, typically on the top level, because decision making happens there. But once that happens, once you have a set of clients or portfolio of clients, I think from there the market validation is very easy. But the first few clients that you would onboard is very tough, and that will definitely happen only through people or people who actually think that they should support you.
Thank you so much. We specialize in engineering digitalization, right? And so for us, market adoption is very traditional. Our customers are very traditional, so cracking in that is a challenge for us. And
so your customers are based out of India, or?
Largely in US and Canada.
Okay, that's good. Because SaaS adoption in India is kind of a little tricky because paying customers are hard to find. That's why we do a full stack solution. But I think the same applies to different territory as well. You have to be in places where customers are going.
Right. Thank you. Thanks.
I would talk more on the business model for us. So when we started off, we decided to go in for signed contracts with hospitals. So we signed up some really good hospitals. Business was going well, but we quickly realized that we were not getting money. Okay, cash was not coming in hand, and cash is the king, which was one of the earlier sessions. The reason is that they are the gorilla. They have all the patients, and what happens is that not only your pricing goes for a toss, but they pay you almost 6 months, 9 months down the line. So then what we said was, okay, while it's good to have these name brands on your, say, deck, but it's important to have cash. So we quickly pivoted to a different model. So we said, okay, we will get our target customers who are, say, cardiologists, MD physicians, neurologists to prescribe to patients who need monitoring. And we went ahead and, charge patients directly for the duration of monitoring, that a doctor was prescribing. And that helped us significantly. And that's the model where we get, 90% of our revenues right now. Now the question is, how do we market, right? So typically in medtech, the way you go about positioning yourself is, a couple of things are important. One is that you need to have a really good clinician, who can sort of work with you and give you feedback, number one, and also, on your board or on your panel. So we work with some of the leading, cardiologists, electrophysiologists in the market. The second thing that you have to look at is that where do all your customers go and where do they seek information? So these are informations, they go for, say, conferences, they go talk out there. The other thing that matters in medtech specifically is publications. Do you have enough clinical evidence to show that this thing works? So the way we went about is we did 3 preclinical studies. We did a clinical study that was really, the outcome was very good. It got published in European Heart Rhythm Association. It was presented in Copenhagen in early part of this year. So those are things help a lot. So it's a very scientific community. You need to talk in a scientific language to them.
We can have one last question.
Do VCs fund this type of clinical studies for you?
I would say it depends on the type of VCs. There are different types of VCs that you need to approach. But in a nutshell, right, it's a business. So how much money I put in, when will I get my return? And trials are risky. So, ideally you want to fund your, trial or your studies through, other mechanisms. There are mechanisms available in biotech, medtech, that take you to, from, say, an idea to, proof of concept to early traction, they call it, or early manufacturing, then trials. So, Department of Biotechnology has an entity called BIRAC that, funds right through this journey. So I would advise for biotech startups to look at that.
Did you get any funding from BIRAC?
Yes, we were thankful to BIRAC. That's been very helpful for us.
All right, if there is no more question, I think we'll close this session. Thank you everyone for your time and for making it engaging. Thank you. Thank you, Ravi. Thank you, Rakesh.
Thank you very much.